Marcus Bennett's hands trembled as he turned the key. 11:47 p.m. The warehouse shift had run late. Again. His supervisor's voice still echoed in his head. "Need you tomorrow, Marcus. Double time if you can swing it." He couldn't. Tomorrow wasn't negotiable. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The apartment door opened to unexpected light. Kitchen table. Elijah, 8 years old, drowning in law books. 4 of them spread like battlefield maps. The child's dark eyes tracked words with mechanical precision. Left to right, down, repeat. His small finger underlined passages in a worn library copy of Georgia Family Law, a comprehensive guide. Marcus's chest tightened. "Buddy, it's almost midnight." Elijah looked up. No surprise. He'd been waiting. "Dad, what happens if your lawyer doesn't come?" "Mr. Henderson will be there." Marcus hung his jacket, threadbare at the elbows. He'd bought it 7 years ago for job interviews. He called last week, confirmed everything. "But what if he doesn't?" Elijah's voice carried weight no 8-year-old should carry. "What if something happens and you're alone?" Marcus sat. The chair creaked. Everything in the apartment creaked. 18 months of double shifts, and it still wasn't enough for a better place. "Then I tell the judge the truth, that I love you, that I show up, that I'm your father." Elijah returned to his book, page 247, Custody Modification Standards. His lips moved silently, memorizing. Marcus watched his son and saw something terrifying. Preparation. Not childhood anxiety, strategic preparation. "Elijah, Section 1993 says the petitioner bears burden of proof. They have to show material change in circumstances. Mom leaving doesn't count. That was 3 years ago. So they need something new, something that makes you unfit now." Marcus felt cold. "Where did you learn that?" "Library. Simple, factual. Miss Rodriguez showed me the legal section. I've been reading since February." February. 3 months of this. 3 months of his child studying law while Marcus stocked warehouse shelves and scrubbed office floors. 3 months of Elijah carrying adult fears in a child's body. "Come on," Marcus stood. "Bedtime. Big day tomorrow, but it'll be okay." Elijah gathered the books with ritual care, stacked them by size. The largest one stayed out. He carried it to his room like a shield. Their bedtime routine hadn't changed since Elijah was 3. Marcus read. Tonight, Chapter 7 of the Chronicles of Narnia, Elijah's favorite. But halfway through the battle scene, Marcus noticed his son wasn't listening. Elijah's eyes were open, staring at the ceiling, lips moving in silent recitation. "You memorizing that law book?" "Some of it." Elijah turned toward him. "Dad, do you think I'm falling behind?" The question landed like a fist. "What?" "At school. Academically, socially. Clinical words, adult assessment. Mom says I need better resources, better opportunities." Marcus closed the book, set it aside, pulled Elijah close. "You're at the top of your class. Your teachers say you're reading 4 grades ahead. You know more about history and science than I do, and I'm 34. But we can afford what matters." Marcus kept his voice steady. "You have a home. You have food. You have a father who loves you more than his own life. Everything else is just noise." Elijah burrowed into his father's shoulder. Finally, blessedly, just a child. "I don't want to leave." "You're not going anywhere. I promise." But promises felt thin tonight. Marcus stayed until Elijah's breathing deepened, evened out. Sleep. He stood, turned off the light, and found the law book on the nightstand. Post-it notes marked dozens of pages. Elijah's careful handwriting annotated margins. Case names. Statute numbers. A child's desperate attempt to understand the machinery about to judge his life. Marcus carried the book to the living room, sat at the kitchen table, opened to a random page. The words blurred. Legal language might as well be ancient Greek. He couldn't fight with this. Couldn't match expert witnesses and expensive attorneys with worn-out love and good intentions. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "Mr. Bennett, this is Donald Henderson. I'm so sorry. Car accident on Highway 75. I'm in the ER, minor injuries, but can't make court tomorrow. Tried calling the PD office for replacement, no one available on such short notice. You'll need to represent yourself. Again, my sincere apologies." Marcus read it 3 times. The words didn't change. He looked at the law book, at his sleeping son's bedroom door, at the clock reading 12:23 a.m. Tomorrow, in 9 hours, he'd walk into family court alone, face his ex-wife's new husband's expensive attorney, try to explain why poverty didn't equal bad parenting, tried to keep his son. Marcus opened the law book to page 1, started reading. Across town, the Hartwell mansion blazed with light despite the late hour. Robert Hartwell swirled scotch and crystal, 52 years old, real estate developer, inherited wealth grown through calculated risk. Second marriage, no biological children. Elijah represented legacy, control, the ability to shape a boy into the son he'd always envisioned. "Richard, walk me through tomorrow one more time." Richard Hartwell, cousin and attorney, sat in the leather chair that cost more than Marcus's car. "It's straightforward, Robert. We present the environmental disparity, his work schedule, the neighborhood crime statistics. We have Dr. Pritchard testifying about optimal childhood development requiring stability and resources. And the private investigator's report? Damning," Richard smiled. "Shark in the suit. Bennett works 70 hours weekly. The boy spends afternoons unsupervised at a public library. The apartment is small, 2 bedrooms, shared bathroom. The school district is adequate but not competitive." Vanessa Bennett Hartwell stood by the window. 32 years old, designer dress, wedding ring that cost more than her first year with Marcus. She looked at her reflection in the dark glass and barely recognized herself. "We're making it sound like Marcus abuses him." Her voice was soft, uncertain. "He doesn't. He loves Elijah." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. "Love doesn't pay for college, darling." Robert's voice carried casual dismissal. "Or therapy, or opportunities. Bennett can visit, we're not monsters, but Elijah deserves better than a warehouse worker who's never home." Richard opened his briefcase, pulled out photos. The Hartwell estate, 6 bedrooms, pool, home theater, Elijah's room already decorated, private school brochures. Judge Morrison has seen this pattern before: loving but struggling parent versus stable, resourced alternative. The law says best interests of the child. We just have to show that best equals what we can provide. "What about Bennett's lawyer?" Robert asked. "That public defender." "Henderson?" Richard laughed. "Overworked, underprepared. He'll make basic arguments about parental rights. I'll dismantle them with expert testimony and documentary evidence. We'll have a ruling by lunch." Vanessa turned from the window. "Elijah doesn't want this." Robert's voice hardened. "Elijah is 8. When you're 8, you want candy for dinner and no bedtime. We're adults. We know what's best." "But maybe we should—" "Vanessa." Robert stood, walked to her. His hand on her shoulder looked gentle. The pressure wasn't. She nodded, mechanical. The hesitation didn't leave her eyes. Richard gathered his papers. "I'll see you at the courthouse. 9 a.m., courtroom 3. Judge Morrison is fair but pragmatic. She'll see the obvious answer." After Richard left, Vanessa went to the guest room, the one that was supposed to be Elijah's. Decorated in blues and grays, expensive furniture, educational posters, a desk better than anything she and Marcus ever owned. On the nightstand, a photo. Marcus holding baby Elijah, both of them laughing. Marcus's face showed exhaustion even then. 23 years old, college dropout, new father, terrified but present, always present. Vanessa touched the frame.
Tomorrow she'd sit in court and help take Elijah from the man who'd never missed a birthday, never missed a school event, never stopped fighting for them, even after she left. She told herself it was for Elijah's good, told herself love wasn't enough, told herself Robert was right. The lies didn't sound convincing, even in her own head. At 2:47 a.m., Elijah Bennett lay awake in his small bedroom. His father's snoring drifted through the thin walls. Exhausted sleep. Honest exhaustion. Elijah's backpack sat ready by the door. Inside, everything he'd prepared. 3 months of work. Documentation his father didn't know existed. Evidence gathered in careful secret, organized with the precision of someone who understood his entire world depended on being thorough. He'd known about the custody case since February, overheard his father's phone call with the lawyer, heard the worry, heard the fear that love wouldn't be enough. So, Elijah decided to make sure it was. He whispered case names in the dark. Bodney versus Bodney, 1977. Griffin versus Griffin, 1985. In re A, 2014. His photographic memory held them all. Every statute, every precedent, every argument he'd need. Tomorrow, if the lawyer didn't come, Elijah knew what he had to do. He was 8 years old, legally powerless, a subject to be discussed and decided upon. But he'd spent 93 days becoming an expert in family law. Tomorrow, Elijah Bennett would prove that power doesn't come from age or money. It comes from preparation, from knowledge, from refusing to be silent. Tomorrow, Elijah Bennett would stop being a child in a custody case. Tomorrow, he'd become an advocate. He closed his eyes and practiced his opening statement one more time. The courthouse rose from downtown like a monument to consequence. Marble steps, stone columns, the architecture demanded respect, submission, acknowledgement that within these walls, lives changed at the strike of a gavel. Marcus Bennett stood at the base of the steps at 8:47 a.m., holding Elijah's hand. His borrowed suit hung slightly loose. Coach Williams was broader in the shoulders. The tie was too long. He'd watched 3 YouTube videos on how to knot it properly and still felt like he was wearing a noose. "Ready, buddy?" Elijah nodded. He wore his Sunday clothes, khaki pants from Goodwill, ironed 3 times last night until the creases were sharp. Button-down shirt, also secondhand, that almost fit. His shoes were too small. He'd outgrown them 2 months ago, but new ones hadn't fit the budget. The pinch helped him stay focused. They climbed together. At the top, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Thompson. "In the gallery, front row. Proud of you both." Behind her, Coach Williams sent a photo. He'd closed his auto shop for the morning. Couldn't miss this. They're people. Not many, not wealthy, but present.
Inside, security. Metal detector. Bailiff James Cooper manned the checkpoint. 45 years old. Former Marine. He'd seen every kind of person pass through this building. Rich, poor, guilty, innocent, desperate. He watched the nervous man in the too big suit and the unusually calm child with the analytical eyes. "First time in family court?" Cooper's voice was gruff, but not unkind. "Yes, sir," Marcus said. Cooper saw the backpack on the boy's shoulder, noticed how the child's posture was too straight. Military-bearing and an 8-year-old. Compensating. Preparing. "You'll be in courtroom 3. Judge Morrison. She's fair. Tell the truth, be respectful, you'll be fine." Elijah looked at Cooper. "Thank you, sir." Adult courtesy. Practiced formality. Cooper watched them walk toward the courtroom and felt something stir. Protective instinct. He had a son. Hadn't spoken to him in 4 years. Pride. Stubbornness. The usual reasons families fractured. He made a mental note. Keep an eye on courtroom 3 today. The Hartwells arrived at 8:59 a.m. Robert drove a Mercedes. Vanessa sat in the passenger seat, silent. She'd chosen her outfit carefully.
Professional, but not ostentatious. Sympathetic mother, not trophy wife. The performance required subtle costuming. Richard Hartwell arrived separately. His BMW was a statement. Success. Power. Winning. They converged at the courthouse entrance like a military operation. "Remember," Richard told Vanessa as they climbed the steps, "you're concerned, not cruel. You love Marcus. You appreciate his efforts. But Elijah needs more than effort. He needs results." Vanessa nodded. Her stomach twisted. Robert's hand pressed the small of her back, guiding, controlling. "This will be over by lunch. Then we can start Elijah's enrollment at Bradford Academy. I spoke with the headmaster. They're holding a spot." "We haven't won yet," Vanessa said. "We will." Robert's confidence was absolute. "Marcus can't afford to fight us. His lawyer is a joke. We have expert witnesses, documentation, resources. This is a formality." They entered the courthouse. Courtroom 3 filled slowly. Maria Gonzalez arrived at 8:45 a.m. Court stenographer, 28 years old, single mother. She worked this job and waited tables at night. Her daughter was 6. Maria knew what it meant to work yourself to exhaustion for a child's future. She set up her stenography machine with ritual precision. This courtroom had seen hundreds of cases, most of them blurred together, but something about today felt different. She'd reviewed the file. Bennett versus Hartwell, modification of custody, adoption petition. Standard wealthy stepfather wants to replace biological father case. She'd seen a dozen like it. Usually, the biological father lost. Mrs. Rachel Thompson entered at 8:50 a.m., 67 years old, retired teacher. She'd taught second grade for 40 years. She knew children, knew which ones were loved, which ones were neglected, which ones were performing, which ones were genuine. She'd been Marcus and Elijah's neighbor for 2 years, watched that boy come home from school every day to an empty apartment, but only for 30 minutes before his father burst through the door, still in warehouse clothes, asking about homework and offering help. She'd seen the library trips, the Sunday coaching, the bedtime routines visible through thin walls. She'd heard Marcus reading Chronicles of Narnia with different voices for each character, making his son laugh. She took her seat in the gallery, front row, witness for Marcus, ready to speak truth. Coach David Williams arrived at 8:52 a.m., 38 years old, former troubled youth, juvenile record sealed, turned his life around through sports and mentorship. Now he volunteered at the community center, coached Little League, and tried to be for other kids what someone had been for him. Marcus had been coaching with him for 2 years. Sundays, his only day off. He could have slept, could have rested. Instead, he showed up for 12 kids who needed someone to care. Coach Williams had driven 2 hours to be here, closed his auto shop. He couldn't let Marcus face this alone. The gallery filled. Court staff, observers, law students, a few reporters. Custody cases rarely drew attention, but something about this one had leaked. 8-year-old involved, wealth versus poverty. The narrative practically wrote itself. At 9 a.m., Judge Patricia Morrison entered her chambers through the private entrance. She was 56 years old, 20 years on the bench. Recently widowed. Her husband's death 6 months earlier had forced perspective. What matters? What doesn't? The difference between law and justice. She opened the Bennett file, read Richard Hartwell's petition, expert witnesses, environmental assessments, financial comparisons, beautifully constructed case painting poverty as harm. Read Marcus Bennett's response, handwritten in sections, clearly drafted by an overworked public defender with 30 other cases. Basic arguments: parental rights, love, effort. Not enough. Never enough against Hartwell's machine. Morrison closed the file and looked at the photo of her grandson on her desk. 8 years old, same age as the Bennett child. She'd raised her own children on a teacher's salary and a cop's pension. Her husband, God rest him, worked 2 jobs for 15 years. They lived in a small house, modest clothes, public schools. Their children turned out fine. Great, even. Successful, happy. But that was 30 years ago. The system had changed. Now, money talked louder. Poverty was evidence. Struggle was suspicious. She wondered if she'd have kept her children if someone wealthier wanted them. Judge Morrison stood, straightened her robes, and prepared to enter the courtroom. 9 a.m.
All rise. Family Court of Fulton County, Georgia is now in session. The Honorable Judge Patricia Morrison presiding. Everyone stood. Judge Morrison entered, took her seat at the bench. Her eyes swept the courtroom, cataloging, assessing. Defense table, Marcus Bennett, alone, no attorney. His face showed barely controlled panic. Plaintiff table, Richard Hartwell, expensive suit, confident posture. Behind him, Robert and Vanessa Hartwell, wealth personified. Gallery, working-class supporters for Marcus, a few observers, stenographer ready. And there, the child. Elijah Bennett sat beside his father, completely still. No fidgeting, no childish boredom or fear. He watched the judge with focused intensity, taking in every detail. His hands rested on a backpack in his lap. Morrison felt something shift. That child was too calm, too prepared. Case number 2025 FC 8847, she began. In the matter of Bennett versus Hartwell, petition for custody modification and adoption. Counsel, state your appearances. Richard stood. Richard Hartwell, Your Honor, representing petitioners Robert and Vanessa Hartwell. Silence from the defense table. Morrison looked at Marcus. Mr. Bennett, where is your attorney? Marcus stood. His hands shook. Your Honor, my court-appointed attorney, Mr. Henderson, was in a car accident last night. He informed me this morning that no replacement was available. I'll be representing myself. The courtroom shifted. Whispers. This case just became a massacre. Richard smiled slightly. Perfect. Morrison's jaw tightened. Mr. Bennett, you understand you have the right to request a continuance until you can secure representation. I do, Your Honor. My son deserves resolution. I'm ready to proceed. Very well. Morrison made a note. Another good parent about to be destroyed by the system. Mr. Hartwell, your opening statement. Richard stood. He moved like a performer taking the stage. Your Honor, this case is about one simple principle: the best interests of the child. My clients don't dispute that Marcus Bennett loves his son. They acknowledge his efforts, his dedication. His intentions are pure. Perfect setup. Praise before the knife. But love, Your Honor, isn't enough. Elijah Bennett is a gifted child. Exceptional intellect. Enormous potential. He deserves an environment that nurtures that potential. Stability, resources, opportunities. Richard pulled out a photo. The Hartwell Mansion. This is the home my clients offer. 6 bedrooms, private study space, pool, library. In a neighborhood with excellent schools and 0 crime. Another photo. Marcus's apartment building. This is where Elijah currently lives. 2 bedrooms, high crime area, underfunded schools. His father works 70 hours weekly. The child spends hours unsupervised. Marcus's face flushed. Shame, rage.
helplessness. Elijah's expression didn't change. He watched Richard like a scientist observing a specimen. "We will present expert testimony, documenting the developmental benefits of the environment my clients provide. We will show that while Mr. Bennett tries his best isn't sufficient for a child of Elijah's potential." He turned to Marcus. The sympathy on his face was theater. "This isn't about punishment. It's about reality. Mr. Bennett can still be part of Elijah's life, visitation, holidays. But primary custody should be with parents who can provide the life this exceptional child deserves." Richard sat. Morrison turned to Marcus. "Mr. Bennett, your opening statement." Marcus stood. His prepared speech evaporated. Richard's words had gutted him. "Your Honor, He looked at Elijah. Found strength. "Your Honor, I'm Elijah's father. I've been there every day since he was born. I work hard, 2 jobs, 70 hours weekly, but I'm never too tired to help with homework, to read at bedtime, to coach his team on Sundays." His voice grew stronger. "Maybe I can't give him a mansion. Maybe I can't give him a private school, but I give him myself. Every day. That has to count for something." He sat. In the gallery, Mrs. Thompson wiped her eyes. Coach Williams nodded. Richard's smile widened. Emotional argument. No legal framework. No evidence. Just desperation. This would be over by lunch. Morrison looked at the 8-year-old boy who hadn't moved, whose eyes never left her face. "Mr. Hardwell, call your first witness." Richard stood. "The petitioners call Dr. Helen Pritchard." The machinery of justice ground forward, and Elijah Bennett opened his notebook and began to write. Dr. Helen Pritchard took the stand at 9:17 a.m. 53 years old. Credentials like armor. Ph.D. from Stanford. Published researcher. Expert witness in 74 custody cases. She cost $400 per hour. Richard approached her with the reverence of a priest approaching an altar. "Dr. Pritchard, please state your qualifications for the court." "I hold a doctorate in developmental psychology from Stanford University. I've published 47 peer-reviewed articles on childhood development, environmental impact on cognitive growth, and optimal conditions for gifted children." Morrison had heard Pritchard before. She was good, credible, dangerous. "Dr. Pritchard, have you reviewed the circumstances of this case?" "I have. I've examined reports on both households, interviewed the petitioners, reviewed Elijah Bennett's academic records, and studied the environmental assessments." She paused. "Such children require specific environmental conditions to thrive. Intellectual stimulation, educational resources, stability, reduced stress." Richard pulled up a chart on the laptop connected to the courtroom screen. "This graph shows the correlation between socioeconomic stability and academic achievement in gifted children. Can you explain?" "Certainly. Research consistently shows that gifted children in resource-rich environments demonstrate significantly better outcomes, higher academic achievement, better college attendance rates, lower rates of anxiety and depression. And resource-poor environments. The data shows increased risk of underachievement, social isolation, and failure to reach potential." Pritchard's voice carried no malice, just clinical assessment. "It's not about parental love. It's about environmental factors that either support or hinder development. Marcus sat frozen. Science was condemning him. Elijah's pen moved across his notebook, fast, precise. Dr. Pritchard, what specific concerns do you have about Elijah's current environment? Several factors concern me. First, parental availability. Mr. Bennett works 70 hours weekly. That's 10 hours daily. Elijah spends significant time unsupervised. Even though he's at the library? Public libraries are wonderful resources, but they're not supervision. They're not parental presence. Children Elijah's age need guidance, structure, consistent adult interaction. Marcus wanted to object, wanted to scream that he was there every night, every morning, every moment he could be. But he didn't know how, didn't know the rules. Richard continued, "What about the neighborhood? The crime statistics are concerning. Elijah's current neighborhood has a crime rate 43% higher than county average. Research shows chronic environmental stress inhibits cognitive development. Children in high-crime areas show elevated cortisol levels, which impacts learning and emotional regulation. And the alternative environment." Pritchard smiled, warm, professional, devastating. The Hartwell home represents optimal conditions: low-crime neighborhood, excellent school district, 2 parents with flexible schedules, resources for tutoring, enrichment activities, sports, a dedicated study space. These factors dramatically increase the probability of positive outcomes. In your professional opinion, doctor, which environment better serves Elijah's best interests? Objectively, the Hartwell home provides superior developmental conditions. Thank you. No further questions. Morrison looked at Marcus. Cross-examination, Mr. Bennett? Marcus stood. His mind raced. He'd watched enough legal dramas to know you were supposed to challenge experts, find holes. But how did you challenge science? Dr. Pritchard, have you met Elijah? I have not personally interviewed him, no. So you don't know what he wants? Richard stood. Objection. The child's preference, while considered, is not determinative. We're discussing optimal development, not popularity contest. Sustained. Morrison's voice was gentle. Mr. Bennett, Dr. Pritchard is testifying about environmental factors, not the child's stated preferences. Marcus felt the ground crumbling. Dr. Pritchard, can rich kids turn out bad? Pritchard smiled patiently. Of course. Wealth doesn't guarantee positive outcomes, but statistically, resource-rich environments provide advantages. Can poor kids turn out good? Absolutely. Many exceptional people come from difficult circumstances. So it's possible for Elijah to do well with me. Yes, possible, but probability matters. We're discussing optimizing chances for success. Marcus sat. He'd accomplished nothing. Elijah's hand moved faster. Richard called his next witness. The petitioners called Mr. David Keller, private investigator. A man in his 40s took the stand, former cop, now worked for law firms documenting things people wanted private. Keller had spent 2 weeks following Marcus Bennett. Richard pulled up photos on the screen. Mr. Keller, please describe your findings. I conducted surveillance of Marcus Bennett from March 1st through March 15th. I documented his daily routine, work schedule, and living conditions. Photos appeared. Marcus leaving for work at 5:47 a.m. Marcus at the warehouse. Marcus at the cleaning service job. Marcus looking exhausted. Mr. Bennett works from 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. at Riverside Warehouse. Then he goes directly to his second job, a commercial cleaning service, working from 5 p.m. to midnight most nights. More photos. Elijah walking home from school alone, Elijah entering the apartment alone, Elijah leaving for the library alone. The child Elijah returns from school at approximately 3:15 p.m. His father isn't home. Elijah stays in the apartment alone for approximately 90 minutes, then walks 6 blocks to the public library, where he remains until his father picks him up around midnight.
The photos told a story: child alone, father absent, neglect dressed as necessity. Did you document the living conditions? I did. More photos: the apartment building, older construction, chipped paint, the modest interior, 2 bedrooms, small kitchen, functional but cramped. I also compiled neighborhood crime statistics. A chart appeared: assault rates, theft rates, drug arrests, all elevated compared to county averages. Richard nodded. No further questions. Morrison looked at Marcus. Cross-examination, Mr. Bennett? Marcus stood. Anger gave him courage. Mr. Keller, those photos of Elijah alone, was he in danger? Not that I observed. Was he doing anything wrong? No, he appeared to be doing homework and reading. And the library, is that a dangerous place? Not particularly. It's a public facility. So my son was safe doing educational activities in a public library. Keller shifted. That's one interpretation. Is there another interpretation where a kid reading books in a library is bad? Richard stood. Objection. Argumentative.
Sustained. Morrison's eyes flicked to Marcus. Keep going. You're finding it. Marcus sat. Small victory. But the photos remained on the screen. Visual evidence of his inadequacy. Richard stood. Your Honor, the petitioners call Vanessa Hartwell. The courtroom tensed. Vanessa stood. She'd been dreading this moment for weeks. She walked to the witness stand like someone approaching execution. Sworn in, sat down, avoided looking at Marcus. Mrs. Hartwell, how long were you married to Marcus Bennett? 8 years. And you have one child together, Elijah? Yes. Can you describe your marriage? Vanessa's voice was soft. We were young. I got pregnant at 21. Marcus dropped out of college to work. We were happy at first, but it was hard. Financially, we struggled constantly. When did you decide to divorce? 3 years ago. She faltered. I couldn't do it anymore. The stress, the bills, the fear. I loved Marcus, but I was drowning. And you've since remarried? Yes, to Robert Hartwell. He's been wonderful, stable, supportive. Richard pulled up more photos, the mansion, Elijah's prepared room. Mrs. Hartwell, can you describe the home you're offering Elijah? It's beautiful. 6 bedrooms. He'd have his own room, his own bathroom. There's a pool, a game room. Robert has enrolled him at Bradford Academy, one of the best private schools in the state. What concerns do you have about Elijah's current situation? Vanessa finally looked at Marcus. Her eyes were wet. I see him falling behind. Socially. He doesn't have friends. He spends all his time alone at the library. He needs activities, sports, opportunities to be with other gifted kids. Do you believe Marcus is a bad father? No. Firm. Marcus loves Elijah. He's dedicated, but love isn't enough. Elijah needs more than Marcus can provide. No further questions. Morrison turned to Marcus. Mr. Bennett. Marcus stood, looking at his ex-wife hurt more than the expert testimony. Vanessa, when you left, did I fight you on custody? No. Did I make it hard? No. You were kind. You agreed to joint custody without argument. Have I ever missed child support? No. Have I ever missed picking up Elijah? No. Have I ever missed a school event, a birthday, a holiday? Vanessa's voice cracked. No, Marcus, you've been there for everything. Then what changed? Why now? Vanessa looked at Robert, then back at Marcus. Nothing changed. That's the problem. Elijah is growing up. His needs are growing. You're still working 2 jobs, still struggling. He deserves better. Better than his father? Better opportunities. Vanessa wiped her eyes. I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help our son. Marcus sat, defeated. In the gallery, Mrs. Thompson squeezed Coach Williams' hand. Richard called Robert Hartwell. Robert testified about his stable income, his desire to provide for Elijah, his vision for the boy's future. perfect stepfather. Generous, patient. Marcus barely listened. The weight of inevitable loss crushed him. Then Richard called Mrs. Thompson. The elderly woman took the stand, sworn in, ready. Mrs. Thompson, you're Mr. Bennett's neighbor, correct? For 2 years, yes. You witnessed the daily routine? I do. Do you observe Elijah alone? I see him come home from school, yes. Without his father. Marcus works until his son gets home. He's there every single day by 3:45. Richard pulled up the photos. But these photos show... Those photos show a child doing homework in a safe apartment for 90 minutes before going to the library. I was alone after school when I was Elijah's age. So were my children. It's called being a latchkey kid, and it teaches independence. Richard shifted tactics. Mrs. Thompson, do you believe Marcus Bennett can provide the same opportunities as the Hartwells? In terms of money, no. In terms of love, presence, and teaching a child what matters, Marcus is a wealthy man. Richard dismissed her quickly. No further questions. Coach Williams testified next, spoke about Marcus's dedication, his coaching, his impact on 12 kids who needed positive male role models. Richard dismissed him as commendable, but 10:47 a.m. Marcus Bennett finished his testimony. His own words about loving Elijah, about showing up, about being present. Heartfelt, earnest, completely inadequate against Richard's expert witnesses and evidence. He returned to his seat, defeated. The courtroom felt like a tomb. Judge Morrison reviewed her notes. The outcome was clear. Marcus Bennett was a good father fighting an impossible battle. Love versus resources. The law favored resources. Mr. Hartwell, your closing argument. Richard stood. Victory posture. Your Honor, the evidence is clear. Marcus Bennett loves his son. No one disputes that. But this case isn't about love. It's about best interests. Elijah deserves optimal conditions for his development. My clients can provide... Your Honor. The voice was small, clear, unexpected. Elijah stood. The courtroom froze. Your Honor, may I speak? Morrison's eyes widened. Richard's mouth opened. Marcus reached for his son. Buddy, sit down. You don't... Yes, I do, Dad. You've protected me my whole life. Let me protect you now. Richard recovered first. Your Honor, this is highly unregular. Children don't testify in their own custody cases. This is emotional manipulation. I'm not trying to manipulate anyone. I'm trying to address the legal issues this court must consider. Morrison leaned forward. The child's composure was remarkable. No tears, no dramatics. Clinical precision.
Mr. Bennett, what is your son... I didn't know, Your Honor. Marcus's voice shook. I swear, I didn't coach him. Elijah pulled a worn notebook from his backpack. Your Honor, I've been preparing for 3 months, since I overheard the custody concerns. I understand this is unusual, but Georgia law doesn't explicitly prohibit a minor from addressing the court in family proceedings when their welfare is at issue. Morrison felt something shift in her chest. This child just cited jurisdictional procedure. Mr. Hartwell, approach. Richard and Marcus came to the bench. Morrison lowered her voice. This is unprecedented, but technically the child is correct. I have discretion to hear testimony from any party with direct interest in the outcome. Your Honor, he's 8 years old. He can't possibly understand. Can't I? Elijah's voice cut through. He hadn't been invited to the sidebar, but he spoke anyway. I understand burden of proof, material change in circumstances, best interests standard. I understand that Mr. Hartwell needs to prove more than economic disparity to justify custody modification. Morrison stared at the child. How do you know that? I read Georgia Family Law, a comprehensive guide, twice, plus 17 appellate decisions on custody modification. The library has a legal section. Silence. Richard's face went pale. Morrison made a decision that would define her legacy. I'm going to allow limited testimony. Mr. Bennett, does your son have your permission? Marcus looked at Elijah, saw determination, saw courage.
saw his child ready to fight. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hartwell, objection noted for the record. Bailiff Cooper, please bring a step stool for the witness stand. Cooper moved quickly. He'd been watching this child all morning. Now he understood why. He positioned the stool, helped Elijah climb up. His head barely cleared the witness stand even with the boost. Maria Gonzalez's hands hovered over her stenography machine. This was history. Elijah raised his small hand, placed it on the Bible, was sworn in. He sat, adjusted the microphone to his height, opened his notebook. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Morrison looked at the 8-year-old boy who'd just stopped Richard Hartwell mid-closing. Proceed, young man. Elijah took a breath, met the judge's eyes. Your Honor, I'd like to testify not about my feelings, but about the law. Specifically, I'd like to address the legal standard for custody modification under Georgia Code Section 19-9-3. Richard Hartwell sat down heavily. Marcus Bennett began to cry, and Elijah Bennett, 8 years old, began to dismantle the case against his father with precision that would have impressed a law professor. The courtroom expected tears, emotional pleas, a child begging to stay with his father. What they got was a legal seminar. Elijah's voice remained steady. Your Honor, Georgia Code Section 19-9-3 establishes the standard for custody modification under Georgia Code section. The petitioner must prove by clear and convincing evidence that there has been a material change in circumstances affecting the welfare of the child, and that modification serves the child's best interests. Morrison leaned back, fascinated. Mr. Hartwell's case rests on economic disparity, but economic disparity alone doesn't constitute material change. This principle was established in Re A-C 2014, where the Georgia Court of Appeals held that mere difference in economic resources between custodial parent and proposed guardian is insufficient grounds for modification absent evidence of actual harm or neglect. Richard shot to his feet. Objection! This is clearly coach testimony, no 8-year-old. Are you suggesting I'm lying? Your Honor, may I recite the full decision? It's 17 pages. I have it memorized. Morrison suppressed a smile. That won't be necessary. Mr. Hartwell, sit down. The child is answering the question of legal standards. Continue, Elijah. Dr. Pritchard testified about optimal environments, but the legal standard isn't optimal. It's best interests. There's a difference. In Bodney v. Bodney, 1977, the court held that best interest analysis must weigh quality of relationship against quantity of resources. Elijah turned a page in his notebook. Dr. Pritchard cited research on socioeconomic outcomes, but she omitted contradicting data. The same longitudinal study she referenced found that parental involvement was a stronger predictor of success than household income. The study actually concluded that children with highly involved parents in lower-income families showed better outcomes than children with uninvolved parents in higher-income families. Richard's jaw clenched. The child had read the actual research. Mr. Keller's photographs show me alone, but Georgia law doesn't require constant supervision for children my age. The Department of Family and Children's Services guidelines state that children 8 and older may be left alone for limited periods if safe conditions exist. I was in our apartment doing homework, then at a public library, both safe environments. Morrison asked, Elijah, how did you access these guidelines? Library computer, Your Honor, the DFCS website. I also called their helpline and asked questions. They were very helpful. The gallery stirred. This child had investigated his own case. Mrs. Hartwell testified I'm falling behind socially, but my school records show I participate in soccer, coached by my father. I'm in the library reading program. My teacher, Mrs. Patterson, wrote in her evaluation that I'm well-adjusted and demonstrates strong social skills. Mr. Hartwell can subpoena her if he wants verification. Richard scribbled notes furiously. I want to stay with my father. Not because I love him more, but because custody decisions should be based on facts in line with legal standards. My father meets all the requirements of custodial responsibilities under Georgia law, and he makes me feel safe. Is it illegal to be poor when you're a good dad?
Mr. Bennett, what is your son? I didn't know, Your Honor. Marcus's voice shook. I swear I didn't coach him. Elijah pulled a worn notebook from his backpack. Your Honor, I've been preparing for 3 months, since I overheard the custody concerns. I understand this is unusual, but Georgia law doesn't explicitly prohibit a minor from addressing the court in family proceedings when their welfare is at issue. Morrison felt something shift in her chest. This child just cited jurisdictional procedure. Mr. Hartwell, approach. Richard and Marcus came to the bench. Morrison lowered her voice. This is unprecedented, but technically the child is correct. I have discretion to hear testimony from any party with direct interest in the outcome. Your Honor, he's 8 years old. He can't possibly understand. Can't I? Elijah's voice cut through. He hadn't been invited to the sidebar, but he spoke anyway. I understand burden of proof, material change in circumstances, best interests standard. I understand that Mr. Hartwell needs to prove more than economic disparity to justify custody modification. Morrison stared at the child. How do you know that? I read Georgia Family Law, a comprehensive guide, twice, plus 17 appellate decisions on custody modification. The library has a legal section. Silence. Richard's face went pale. Morrison made a decision that would define her legacy. I'm going to allow limited testimony. Mr. Bennett, does your son have your permission? Marcus looked at Elijah, saw determination, saw courage, saw his child ready to fight. Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Hartwell, objection noted for the record. Bailiff Cooper, please bring a step stool for the witness stand. Cooper moved quickly. He'd been watching this child all morning. Now he understood why. He positioned the stool, helped Elijah climb up. The boy's head barely cleared the witness stand, even with the boost. Maria Gonzalez's hands hovered over her stenography machine. This was history. Elijah raised his small hand, placed it on the Bible, was sworn in. He sat, adjusted the microphone to his height, opened his notebook. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Morrison looked at the 8-year-old boy who just stopped Richard Hartwell mid-closing. Proceed, young man. Elijah took a breath, met the judge's eyes. Your Honor, I'd like to testify not about my feelings, but about the law. Specifically, I'd like to address the legal standard for custody modification under Georgia Code Section 19-9-3. Richard Hartwell sat down heavily. Marcus Bennett began to cry, and Elijah Bennett, 8 years old, began to dismantle the case against his father with precision that would have impressed a law professor. The courtroom expected tears, emotional pleas, a child begging to stay with his father. What they got was a legal seminar. Elijah's voice remained steady. Your Honor, Georgia Code Section 19-9-3 establishes the standard for custody modification. The petitioner must prove by clear and convincing evidence that there has been a material change in circumstances affecting the welfare of the child, and that modification serves the child's best interests. Morrison leaned back, fascinated. Mr. Hartwell's case rests on economic disparity, but economic disparity alone doesn't constitute material change. This principle was established in Re AC 2014, where the Georgia Court of Appeals held that mere difference in economic resources between custodial parent and proposed guardian is insufficient grounds for modification absent evidence of actual harm or neglect. Richard shot to his feet. Objection. This is clearly coach testimony, no 8-year-old. Are you suggesting I'm lying? Your Honor, may I recite the full decision? It's 17 pages. I have it memorized. Morrison suppressed a smile. That won't be necessary. Mr. Hartwell, sit down. The child is answering the question of legal standards. Continue, Elijah. Dr. Pritchard testified about optimal environments, but the legal standard isn't optimal. It's best interests. There's a difference. In Bodney versus Bodney, 1977, the court held that best interest analysis must weigh quality of relationship against quantity of resources. Elijah turned a page in his notebook. Dr. Pritchard cited research on socioeconomic outcomes, but she omitted contradicting data. The same longitudinal study she referenced found that parental involvement was a stronger predictor of success than household income. The study actually concluded that children with highly involved parents in lower-income families showed better outcomes than children with uninvolved parents in higher-income families. Richard's jaw clenched. The child had read the actual research. Mr. Keller's photographs show me alone, but Georgia law doesn't require constant supervision for children my age. The Department of Family and Children's Services guidelines state that children 8 and older may be left alone for limited periods if safe conditions exist. I was in our apartment doing homework, then at a public library, both safe environments. Morrison asked, Elijah, how did you access these guidelines? Library computer, Your Honor, the DFCS website. I also called their helpline and asked questions. They were very helpful. The gallery stirred. This child had investigated his own case. Mrs. Hartwell testified I'm falling behind socially, but my school records show I participate in soccer, coached by my father. I'm in the library reading program. My teacher, Mrs. Patterson, wrote in her evaluation that I am well-adjusted and demonstrate strong social skills. Mr. Hartwell can subpoena her if he wants verification. Richard scribbled notes furiously.
He pulled out photographs. Exhibit E. I took these myself. Our apartment. Mr. Keller's photos made it look depressing, but look closer. He held up images. This is my room. Small, yes, but there's a bookshelf my father built. 73 books. He bought one every payday. Here's the kitchen. We eat dinner together every night. This table has seen 1,000 conversations, 1,000 homework sessions, 1,000 moments of family. More photos. This is my father at my soccer game. This is us at the library. This is him helping me with science fair project. These are moments money can't buy. Richard tried again. Your Honor, this is emotional manipulation. This is evidence of relationship quality, Mr. Hartwell, which is directly relevant to best interest analysis. Let him finish. Elijah pulled out letters. Exhibit F. I asked my teachers to write character references from my father. I didn't tell him. Mrs. Patterson, my second-grade teacher. Mr. Rodriguez, my current teacher. Mrs. Chen, the school librarian. He handed them to Bailiff Cooper, who delivered them to the judge. Morrison read. Her expression softened. They all say the same thing. My father is involved, supportive, present. Mrs. Chen wrote, in 15 years as school librarian, I've never seen a parent more dedicated to their child's education. Marcus Bennett may work 2 jobs, but he makes Elijah his priority. Elijah pulled out his library card, worn, bent, stamped hundreds of times. Mr. Hartwell presented my library time as neglect. This card tells a different story. Education, curiosity, initiative. My father gave me access to knowledge. That's not poverty, that's wealth. He placed the card on the evidence table. Dr. Pritchard said gifted children need intellectual stimulation. I get that. At the library. In conversations with my father. In the questions he helps me answer. Rich kids get tutors. I got something better. I got a father who taught me to find answers myself. The gallery was silent. Mrs. Thompson wiped tears. Final exhibit. Crime statistics for our neighborhood. Mr. Hartwell presented raw numbers, but context matters. I pulled 5 years of data. Crime is decreasing. Our specific street is safe. I walked to the library in daylight. I'm supervised there by staff my father knows personally. He calls to check on me every day. Elijah gathered his papers, organized them carefully. Your Honor, I have one more thing to address. Mr. Hartwell's testimony about providing a stable home. His tone shifted, sharper. He said he wants to give me opportunities, but what he really wants is control. He enrolled me in private school without asking me. He decorated a room without consulting me. He's planned my future without considering what I want. Elijah looked at Robert. That's not parenting. That's possession. My father asks me what I want, what I dream about, what scares me. He listens. Mr. Hartwell has never asked me anything. He just assumed money would be enough. Robert's face flushed with anger. I don't want a mansion, Your Honor. I want my dad. And all this evidence proves that wanting him isn't foolish. It's logical. He's been the optimal parent all along. The law just needs to recognize it. Elijah closed his folder. I'm ready for cross-examination. Judge Morrison looked at Richard Hartwell. Your witness, counselor. Richard stood, knowing he was about to face the most prepared witness of his career, an 8-year-old boy who'd just destroyed his case. Finally, Richard gave up. No further questions. Elijah stepped down. Marcus wrapped him in an embrace, whispered, I'm so proud of you. Judge Morrison looked at both attorneys. Does either counsel wish to present closing arguments? Richard shook his head, defeated. Marcus stood. Your Honor, my son said everything that needed to be said. Morrison nodded. The court will take a brief recess to consider its ruling. 15 minutes that would determine everything. Judge Morrison raised her hand before Richard could decline closing arguments. Actually, I have one question for the witness. Elijah, please return to the stand. Elijah climbed back up, uncertain. You've given us law and evidence, but I'd like to hear something else. In your own words, not legal citations. What does family mean to you? Elijah was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer, more child than lawyer. Your Honor, rich kids get tutors. I got the library. Rich kids get therapy. I got my dad's listening ear. Rich kids get opportunities. I got resourcefulness. He looked at Marcus. My dad reads to me every night. Different voices for each character in Narnia. He makes me laugh. When I have nightmares, he sits with me. When I'm scared about school, he tells me I'm brave. His voice wavered. He teaches me that love is action, not words, that showing up matters, that working hard isn't shameful, it's honorable. Elisha turned to Vanessa. Mom, I know you love me. I do. But you left. You chose easier over us. I'm not angry, but I need you to understand love isn't about what you can buy me. It's about who shows up when things are hard. Tears streamed down Vanessa's face. Mr. Hartwell offers me a mansion, but my dad gave me a home. There's a difference. Home is where someone knows your favorite book, where someone notices when you're sad. where someone works themselves to exhaustion because your happiness matters more than their comfort. Elijah's hands gripped the witness stand. Your Honor, I'm not just the subject of this case. I'm a person. And if the law says my voice doesn't matter because I'm 8, then the law is wrong. He took a breath. This case assumes money equals fitness. That's not law, that's prejudice. My father isn't failing me. The system is failing him by measuring worth in dollars instead of devotion. If you take me from my father, you're not rescuing me. You're telling me that everything he sacrificed doesn't matter because he couldn't afford to sacrifice more. You're telling every working parent that love isn't enough, that struggle equals failure. His voice strengthened. But I'm proof that's wrong. I'm succeeding. I'm thriving, not despite my father's circumstances, because of his character. He taught me to be resourceful, to value education, to work hard, to care about people. Elijah looked directly at Judge Morrison. You can give me to people with money, or you can let me stay with the parent who gave me everything that matters. The law says best interests. My best interest is staying with my dad. Silence filled the courtroom. Complete. Absolute. Maria Gonzalez had stopped typing, tears on her cheeks. Several gallery members openly cried. Marcus buried his face in his hands. Vanessa sobbed quietly. Robert stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Richard Hartwell looked at his notes, defeated. Judge Morrison removed her glasses, wiped her eyes. Thank you, Elijah. You may step down. Elijah returned to his father. Marcus pulled him close, both of them shaking. The court will recess for 15 minutes. The gavel fell, and everyone knew the system had just witnessed something that would change everything. The 15-minute recess felt eternal. Marcus and Elijah sat in the hallway. Marcus held his son close. Whatever happens, you were incredible, so brave. Did I do enough? Elijah's voice was small now, just a scared child. You did everything possible. I'm so proud. Vanessa approached, hesitant. Robert had stormed off somewhere, furious. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. I thought I was helping. I know, Mom. But helping means asking what I need, not deciding for me. I love you. I love you too, but I need to stay with Dad. Robert's sharp voice cut through. Vanessa, we're leaving. This is humiliating. She looked between her son and her husband. Something shifted in her expression. No, I want to hear the ruling. Robert's face flushed with anger, but Vanessa didn't move. The bailiff called them back. Judge Morrison entered. The courtroom rose, sat. Tension, suffocating. Morrison's voice was formal. This court has reviewed extensive testimony and evidence regarding custody modification petition 2025 FC 8847. She looked at Richard. Mr. Hartwell presented expert witnesses regarding optimal developmental environments. While their credentials are impressive, their testimony conflated economic advantage with parental fitness. Richard's jaw tightened. Dr. Pritchard discussed research on socioeconomic outcomes, but as young Elijah correctly noted, she omitted contradicting data showing parental involvement as the stronger predictor of success.
Morrison turned to Marcus. "Mr. Bennett, your son presented something this court has never witnessed. A child so thoroughly prepared to advocate for his own welfare that he demonstrated better legal analysis than many attorneys." She held up Elijah's evidence folder. "This documentation shows more thorough parenting than many families with unlimited resources. Perfect attendance at school events, never missed child support, academic excellence, daily involvement despite exhausting work schedule." Her voice grew passionate. "This court has watched too many cases where financial resources masqueraded as fitness, where genuine parenting was devalued against material provision. This case represents everything wrong with how we measure family." Morrison leaned forward. "The burden of proof rests with petitioners. They must show material change in circumstances causing harm. They haven't. They've shown economic disparity, but Georgia law doesn't equate poverty with inadequacy or wealth with virtue. This court will not participate in a system that tells working parents their sacrifice doesn't matter because they can't afford more." She looked directly at Marcus and Elijah. "Petition for custody modification is denied. Full custody remains with Marcus Bennett." The gavel fell. Marcus collapsed, relief flooding through him. Elijah burst into tears, finally just a child who'd been terrified of losing his father. The gallery erupted in applause. Judge Morrison allowed it briefly before restoring order. Richard gathered his papers in silence. Professional humiliation complete. Robert stormed out. Vanessa remained, watching her son cling to his father, understanding what she'd almost destroyed. Judge Morrison wasn't finished. "Mr. Bennett, your son taught this court something profound about love, sacrifice, and what truly matters in parenting. Don't let him forget, he taught you too." Marcus could barely speak. "Thank you, Your Honor." Morrison smiled, small but genuine. "Thank you both for reminding me why I became a judge." Court adjourned. Marcus held Elijah while both cried tears of relief, exhaustion, and joy. They'd faced the system and won, not with money, with truth. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.